now let's take a look at problem set 10, order of operations with negative numbers. So we did a little bit of this in the last class, but we're going to do some more. So for example, here's negative 2 plus negative 3 times negative 4. So I start from left to right. I don't have parentheses that are acting like parentheses, but I do have multiplication. So I need to do negative 3 times negative 4 first, and that gives me a positive 12. Now I can do my adding. So I have a negative 2 plus 12 gives me 10. Okay, our next example. Here I have 3 times negative 2 plus negative 1 times 4 plus negative 1. So I need to start with parentheses, and I have two sets of parentheses here. Here's my first one. Negative 2 plus a negative 1 gives me a negative 3. 4 plus a negative 1 gives me a positive 3. Now I'm going to multiply from left to right. So 3 times negative 3 gives me a negative 9. And a negative 9 times 3 gives me a negative 27. Okay, here is another example with negatives in there. So I look at this whole thing and I think, oh gosh, where do I start? Well, I am going to start with what's inside the parentheses. So I have a parenthesis here and an inside parenthesis. So I'm going to start with these parentheses. So 2 plus a negative 3 gives me a negative 1. I still need to look inside these parentheses, and I have multiplication, so I'm careful that I don't do the adding first, I do the multiplication. And negative 2 times a negative 1 gives me a positive 2. I still have parentheses here, so I can go 2 plus 2 gives me 4. Now I'm going to come here and look at this, and I'm going to do multiplication before I do adding. So negative 2 times 4 gives me a negative 8. Now I do my adding, and I get negative 6. Next problem is negative 3 plus negative 2 plus 5. Well, I go from left to right, so negative 3 plus negative 2 gives me a negative 5, and negative 5 plus 5 gives me a 0. Okay, next problem looks like this. If I have negative 2 parentheses negative 3 plus 2 times 4 plus negative 2 parenthesis plus negative 1 parenthesis 3 plus negative 2. Alright, I am going to start by looking at what's inside the parentheses. So right here I have these parentheses and these. I'm going to go ahead and go 4 plus negative 2. That gives me 2. And I can look at this parenthesis over here. 3 plus negative 2 gives me a 1. Inside here, I'm going to go ahead and do my multiplication first before I do adding. So 2 times 2 is 4. And here I went negative 1 times 1. That gave me a negative 1. Here, negative 3 plus 4 leaves me with a 1. Then I go negative 2 times 1, which gives me a negative 2. And that negative 1 just comes down. And negative 2 plus a negative 1 gives me a negative 3. Okay, now we're going to take a look at problem set 11. And that's looking at the commutative property of multiplication. And we've talked about this in class already. And really what this is saying is that order does not matter. Not in multiplication. So, for example, A times B is equal to B times A. 2 times 3 is equal to 3 times 2, because 2 times 3 is 6 and 3 times 2 is 6. So we can use this property to reorder and simplify. So here is an example. If I have 3x times negative 2 times y, I can reorder these and put all the numbers together in front and all the variables behind. And usually when I put the variables behind, I write them alphabetically. So I would start with what's closest to A and go on down through Z. So if I reorder these, I have 3 times a negative 2 times x times y. And 3 times negative 2 is a negative 6, and then I have times x and times y. So there it is. So this becomes negative 6y. X is actually the exact same thing as negative 6xy. We just usually like to write it like this. They are the same answer, though, for the very reason of the commutative property. So let's take a look at some more examples. So in this case on number 2, if I look at number 2, what I notice is I have a parenthesis inside here, and these are like terms of adding. So I can combine my like terms first, and that's what I'm going to do. So I go a 3ab plus a negative 2ab. Hey, that leaves me with just 1ab. Now this is all multiplication, and once this is all multiplication, that's when I can do my moving things around. I couldn't have done that here because these guys had not been added yet. So the terms need to be added before you start doing your rearranging. So when I do my rearranging, I'm going to bring -2 times, the next number is a 3, times an a times a b times an x times a y. I just put them all in alphabetical order. Then I do my multiplication, and I'm left with -6abxy. Let's take a look at another one here. Okay, so on this one, we're going to make sure that we're careful. We need to do the addition. So here, I'm going to first start by rearranging it because I can't add these. I don't know if they are like terms yet. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to look at this term. Remember, this is one term. And then I have a second term over here. And I'm going to go ahead and rearrange the terms because this is all multiplication in there and that's all multiplication there. But those are two terms. I'll go ahead and rearrange this term and see what I can do with it. Rearrange this term and see what I can do with it. Because unlike the last problem where they were in parentheses and I could see that they were both a, b, and I could combine them right away, this time I'm going to rearrange them first. So I go -3 times 2 times a times b, and here I'm going to have -4 times a -2 times b times a. But really I can rewrite that and say b times a is a times b. This gave me -6ab. This gave me, well, negative times negative became a positive ba, but I know that ab equals ba, so I can just switch those places right there, and I get -6ab plus 8ab. Well, now I can see that I have like terms because I have the same variables. Since I have like terms, I can combine them, and that leaves me with a 2ab.